Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
P effective, which is basically this force here, or let me first write down this. Okay, so this is P and T, and P effective is no minus sign here, sorry. Minus signs comes after I substitute this. L times UGT. Okay, this is what we have here. Okay, so if I multiply this whole thing, or sorry, divide this whole thing by Mn, what would I get? Qn plus 2 zeta n omega n divided by this whole thing by Mn. Okay, Mn times UGT. Remember, I'm just doing the same thing that I have done here. Okay, now PT just I'm writing UGT. Many things I also keep on repeating, especially when you have multiple these equations, so that it goes in your long-term memory, and you keep an eye for those things and you do not forget or get confused. Now, I've already said my S is M times L. If you remember, okay, this thing, the numerator actually is defined as ln. This comes from again the equation that you had done in the generalized coordinate system. And zeta n, gamma n is basically ln divided by mn, where ln is this divided by mn. So this whole thing is actually gamma n. Okay, and you could have written the same thing without even me having to write all this, So basically your expression becomes, or the equation that you need to solve for seismic excitation, it becomes this, the same thing that we have written above. Becomes gamma n times UGT. Okay. So if you are able to solve this equation for the nth mode, then you can do for all the modes and combine all the modes, okay, using this expression here, and you can get the displacement as contribution of each mode n equal to 1 to n, and this I can write it as phi n times qn here. But now for a special case, qnt is represented as, especially for ground motion, this can be represented as gamma n times phi n times dnt. Okay, is this clear to all of you? I'm not doing anything new. Okay, my unt is basically, so I've just write down this. Okay, now in addition to that, we had also derived my equivalent static force in the nth mode is Sn t times the acceleration. Okay, so you know the displacement in the nth mode, and you know the equivalent static forces in nth mode. Okay, your job is now basically very easy. You know the equivalent static force. Let us say this is M3n, M2n, and M1n. These are equivalent static forces. Okay, displacement is known. These equivalent static forces are known. Base shear is very easy to calculate. Story shear is very easy to calculate. Just consider equilibrium. And same goes for the moment as well. Okay, for example, moment at the base here would be, what would be the moment here? Can I not say moment would be simply F1n? This is H1. Let us say this is H2 and the total height is H3. Can I say moment at the base would be F1 times H1, F2n times H2 plus F3n times H3. This would be the total base moment in that structure. Any doubt up to this point? Okay. Now consider this. Okay. Ground motion, this factor represents the basically the modal, the modal contribution. Okay. We know what is the solution to this equation, isn't it? We have the zeta n omega n qn plus omega n square qn is equal to UGT. Okay. And dt is basically solution to this equation, right? Maybe I should not write, sorry, I should not write q and t here. Let us write down dt here. So this is known to us. What is also known to us, in fact, okay, what is given to us is response spectra. What is response spectra? It is the peak value of any response quantity as a function of different time period for single degree of freedom system. Okay, so we have this, we have given this from a response spectra perspective. So let us say, in most of the cases, our goal of any structural analysis is to find out the peak responses, like peak displacements and peak forces. Okay, so I have my UNT, I have my FNT, okay, and I have my, let us say, MNT, which is the moment. These are for all the nth mode. Okay, so let us do something. Let me say this is my displacement UNT. Okay, and this is the time variation. So as we know, it would look like something like this here. Okay, now let us say this is first mode instead of saying UN. Okay, this is the first mode. Okay, and the second mode would be something like this. Okay, third mode would be again something like this. Okay, now different degrees of freedom system. What is response spectra? Let us say this is my response spectra and I write something like this. I mean, if it's D, it looks like something like this here, not like this, something like this. Okay. If it's A, the acceleration, it looks like something like this here. Okay. So this is D is basically what? U max if the damping is very small. Okay. This is A means my Q double dot max. Now, so for different mode, we can find out what is the peak response from the response spectra. Okay, but let us look at this. For each mode, depending upon the time period of this mode, for example, for this one, this is my U1 max. It is happening at this time T1. For this case, let us say this is my U2 max. And for the third case, let us say this is my U3 max. Can you appreciate the fact that if I have n single degree of freedom system, their maximum response would occur at different time? Like for first case, it would occur at this time, for the second case at this, and the third case at this point. Okay. The question becomes, we can combine different mode and we can find out the displacement as a function of time. Okay. And the time variation. How can I utilize the response spectra, which is the peak response, so that I can also find out the peak response of a multi-degree of freedom system? Okay, and understand the issue here that we have. For single degree of freedom system, I know my peak response. But for multi-degree of freedom system, I do not know my peak response because it is a combination of different single degree of freedom system, and different single degree of freedom system will achieve their maximum response at different time. So, and the idea is, why do we do the response spectra analysis? Do you remember? We do response spectra analysis so that I don't have to solve the equation of motion every time and find out the response. Okay, for example, if I do the response spectra, okay, or as a matter of fact, any other force, I do not actually solve this equation, is it? Because I'm only interested in the peak response. I only need to know the Tn value. If I know the Tn value, I can come here and I can find out the Dmax. I do not actually numerically solve this. And the response spectra, they are already given. Okay, so for each ground motion, people have prepared response spectra and those are given. So now I'm considering not the combining, not doing the time history analysis or anything. I just want to get the peak response. And I'm not interested in, like, at each time combine different systems, then get the time variation of each degree of freedom system and then find out the maximum, at what point the maximum would occur and all those things. I want to resort to a very simple procedure in which the maximum response for each degree of freedom can be found out. My only challenge is that they happen at different point of time. And the maximum response, Umax, cannot be simply U1 max, U2 max, plus U3 max and so on. In fact, it would be always less than equal to this. Okay. And this goes not only for displacement, but also for all the things that you find out. Remember, now if you talk in terms of Umax, all the quantities, whether it is equivalent static force or moment at the base, all things can now be found out in terms of Umax for that particular mode. Okay. And then we need to come up with a procedure so that we can combine these three, or all different modes, the maximum response, and get somehow Umax, because this is not simply equal to the algebraic sum. So what do we do? There are people have come up, there are different methods that are available through which the maximum response of different systems can be combined so that I can get Umax, and those methods. So basically, methods of combining peak responses of different modes. Peak responses of different modes. Okay. So people have come up with different method how to actually combine different modes and get the total maximum response. Now, as you can imagine, these methods are approximate. These are not exact method, but they are quite reasonable in terms of they're people have done a lot of research and they usually come to closer to the exact value. Okay, and let us look at two of those methods where people have actually utilized that and have come up with the methods. Okay, so the first method is called SRSS. SRSS method is basically sum root of square, okay, of all the sums. So square root of sum of squares. So basically in this method, if you have multiple responses, D1, D2, D3, and so on, maximum response can be obtained as D1 square, D2 square, D3 square, and so on. Now note that it is not the algebraic sum, and it would always be less than the algebraic sum. Okay, so people have come up with this method, and these tend to be produce good results. Of course, there are cases where the difference between actual peak response and the peak response obtained this method would be a little bit different. Okay, and you don't need to get into that. Although I'll tell you what if the modes are very closely spaced, like one mode is like 0.5 second time period, other mode is like 0.55 second time period, then this method might not work out that well. And there are other methods to do that. The other method, like people employ a complete quadratic combination. Okay. And this method is little bit mathematically complicated. So in our course, we are only going to focus on this because I mean, you can have for hand calculation, SRSS is only amenable. If you have a software, you can implement CQC and get the total response, maximum response using individual peak responses using complete quadratic combination method. Okay. So is this formulation clear what we have done here? We have said that for seismic excitation, I can go ahead and find out the time variation of the response. Okay. By combining different modes that we have done previously. But good thing about the seismic response is that we have available response spectra. Okay, so peak responses are available to us, and this would apply for any other method for which the response of a single degree freedom system are applied in terms of some chart. So even like you could do it for pulse type motion where the peak response is available in terms of the time period and the time duration of the pulse. So if the peak responses are available, we can combine them, the peak responses, but not using conventional method that we have been doing so far, because in the previous method, we were combining responses for any time t, and the final response was as a function of that time t. Now I don't want to solve it in any time t. I don't want to find out d1t because I know my d1 max from the response spectra here. If d1 max is known, I can combine the maximum responses and approximately get the total maximum response using one of these methods. Okay, so this is the summary of. Okay, so this method is also called, you will see in codes, response spectrum method. And response spectrum method is nothing but a special case of modal superposition analysis. Okay, remember modal superposition analysis is for any time t, but for maximum response, we use the response spectra and it is called response spectrum method. Okay, so it is a special case of modal superposition analysis for peak responses or responses. All right, let us see one example how we can actually utilize this method. Okay, so what we are going to do, let us take the example of what we have done and extend it here for the same time variation. Okay, so basically what I want to do here, we had done this method, right? 2m, m, 2k and k. Okay, now let us say, or what I want to do here, basically, I want to find out if earthquake force is applied, let us say here, something like this. I want to find out the expansion of the earthquake forces. Okay, remember earthquake forces can be written as, what is S here? This is the influence vector. And remember earthquake forces are nothing but S times UGT. If I write this S as M times influence vector L. Okay. Can you find me out what is, now here there are 2 degrees of freedom. So I will have S1 here and I will have S2 here. Okay. So get me S1 and S2. Okay, I will again rewrite the equation. S1 is gamma n times mass times phi n. Okay. And gamma n is phi n times not phi n, sorry. Phi n transpose time the S vector divided by Mn. Okay. So can you get me the distribution of this S in terms of S1 and S2? Once you have that, remember my F and T, the equivalent static forces are nothing but S times A and T. Remember, so for the nth mode, it would be Sn times A and T. Okay, similarly, so you would have F1 and F2. Once you have that, can you also get me the base shear V1, V2 at each degree of freedom? Okay, let us do that. First, we will do a time example. Then, if the time permits, we'll do a this peak response example. Okay. Instead of following this method, also try to get the same answer just directly from the displacement. That is from U1t and U22t for each mode by multiplying the story displacement with the stiffnesses and utilizing this expression here. Remember, A1t is nothing but omega n square d1t and A2t is nothing but omega 2 square d2t, and see if you get the using the equivalent static method. Okay, let us try. Okay, let us see. Let us try to get the answer. So my S vector is nothing but mass times L vector. Now influence vector in this would be, what would be the influence vector here? If you apply a unit ground displacement in each degree of freedom, the displacement is 1, 1. So the influence vector would be 1 here. So effectively what you have here is 2m0 m times 1, 1. Okay, which basically is 2m m. Okay, and that makes sense. I mean, if you get the effective earthquake force, it is nothing but mass times L times UGT. Okay, which is basically minus 2m UGT and MUGT is each mass multiplied by the ground acceleration. And what I want to do is to see how these, because of these earthquake forces, how the inertial forces in each mode is distributed. Okay, and let us see how do we do that. To do that, first what I need to do, I need to find out the parameter gamma 1, or before that, let us do this. Let us first find out M1. Do you remember in the last class we had found out M1? What was M1? I think it was 3m by 4. 3m by 4, is it correct?
3m by 2.
3m by 2. How about M2? Do you remember M2?
3m.
3m. How about K1? I think 3k by 4 and 6k, right? So correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. And so we have that. Let us say gamma 1 would be phi 1 times t times the mass vector times L divided by M1. So let us see, what do we get? Half 1 mass times L is 2m m. Okay. Well, there is a negative sign here. Factor does not have any negative sign. And then M1, M is 3m by 2. So this one we get as 2m divided by 3m by 2. So this gives a 4 by 3. Yes. Similarly, gamma 2 would be phi 2. How much your gamma 2 comes out to be? Anybody?
Minus 1 by 3.
Yes, minus 1 by 3. Okay. So what would be my S1, which is associated with the inertial forces in the first mode? S1 is gamma 1 times mass times phi 1. So 4 by 3 times 2m 0 0 m times half and 1, and this comes out to be, this would be m and m, so both would be 4m by 3. Okay, similarly S2 phi 2 m times phi 2, so this would be 1 by 3 2m 0 0 m and minus 1 and 1, so this would be minus 2m and m. Okay, and 1 by 3 would be
So that will be minus 1 by 3. Gamma 2.
this one. Yeah, correct. This would be minus 1 by 3. So there would be minus 2m and m. So this would be 2m by 3. And this would be minus m by 3. Correct? So, and remember, this is my u1, this is u2. This is u1, this is u2. So it would be better interpreted in terms of graphical representation. Total mass is 2m, and 2m here and m here. And this is my S. Remember, S was 2m and m. And if you look at each mode, so this is S1. Okay, at mode, at degree of freedom 1, this is 4m by 3. And it is in positive direction, the inertial force. Okay, the same mass 4m by 3 in the positive direction. This plus I have for the second case 2m by 3, and in the opposite direction m by 3. Okay, and this is S2. And if you look at this, there is just, if you sum this up, 4m by 3 minus m by 3 becomes m. 4m by 3, 2m by 3 becomes 2m, which is this. Okay. And if you want to, let us say you have a earthquake ground motion UGT for which you have found out the acceleration, or you could do displacement as well. I will do the second method using displacement. So let us say due to this, for each mode you have A1t and A2t, which is basically the solution of this equation, except there is no gamma term here. To convert it from that to for each mode, you need to multiply with the gamma n. So basically for each mode, if you remember, what is the equivalent static force? Fn. Fn is nothing but Sn times A and T, right? In short. So all I need to do, multiply this with A1t for the first mode, A1t for the first mode, A2t for the second mode times A2t for the second mode. And what I have got is basically the equivalent static forces. Okay. And to find out the story shear, what do I need to do? Let us consider story shear here. If you consider the equilibrium, what would you get? The total story shear. So this would be your second degree of freedom first mode, and this would be first degree of freedom first mode. This would be second degree of freedom second mode, first degree of freedom second mode. Okay, so we can get U21 as 4m by 3 A1t, V11 as, now it will have, if you take it will have sum of both. So you will have 4m by 3 A1t plus 4m by 3 A1t, which is basically 8m by 3 A1t. Similarly, so this is corresponding to this one. For the second mode, this is first mode. For the second mode again, V22 is minus m by 3 A2t. Remember, it is just this force. And V12 is sum of both two. So I will have 2m by 3 A2t plus, or let us say minus here, minus m by 3 A2t, which basically is m by 3 A2t. Is this clear? Now remember, these things we are doing for the A2T, but even if the quantity is A2 max, for that particular mode, at least I can get using the same procedure, right? It's a different story that when I will combine the first and second mode, I will take the SRSS. Okay, but basically the same procedure is what I will follow. Any doubt up to this point, anybody? If not, I will also told you that same, okay, the same expressions I could have gotten using the expressions for displacement, or in short, U1T and U2T. What is my U1T? It's gamma 1 times, well, we had written it as phi n times Q and T. Remember, once you get used to all these notations and derivations, even you forget something, you can easily write it. And that's what happens with me as well. You know, I just write down the original equation and then you can just write down everything using that. So phi n times gamma n times d and t. Okay, so this is for n. U1 will become, okay, if you want to write down for U1, it will become gamma 1 times phi n, which is half 1 times d1t. Okay, so I'll just write down here as d1t. Okay, and gamma 1 was what? It was 4 by 3, right? So this basically becomes 2 by 3 d1t, or I will keep d1 outside, and 4 by 3 d1t. Now what is d1 here? d1 is nothing but a1 divided by omega n square. What is a1? a1 is k by 2m. Okay, so this would be 2m by k times a1, and like I will substitute that later. Similarly, my u2 vector become minus 1 by 3 times the mode shape minus 1 1, and then d2t. So I will get here as 1 by 3 minus 1 by 3 d2t. So if you want to look at in terms of displacement, what basically it is saying, in the first mode, you have this displacement. Remember, this is nothing but u11 u21. This is u12 u22. So for the first mode, this is u12, this is not u12, u11, this is u21 plus u2, sorry, again 12, u12, and this is u22. Okay, so this is first mode, this is second mode. So I'm discussing the first procedure, not the equivalent static procedure. So in this procedure, I know that the storage stiffness here is 2K, storage stiffness here is K. Okay, 2K, K here. So what would be my V21 and V11? Similarly, V22 and V12 would be, remember, V21, that is here, would be storage stiffness, which is K times the story drift, which is U21 minus U11. So U21 minus U11 would be 4 by 3 minus 2 by 3. So it is K times 2 by 3 D1T. Now I can substitute my D1T equal to 2m by K A1. So that would give me 2m by K. It would become 4m by 3 A1T. Okay. And V11 become story stiffness, which is 2K times the story deformation U21. Okay, minus 0. So that would be U2k 2k times U21, which is, where is U21? 4 by 3 times D1t. Again, I will write as D1t as this quantity here to get this one as 8 m A1 by 3. Okay, and we can compare the results. Actually, we can look at the results that we've got and see what is the. So you can do for the second mode, right? I'm not going to repeat it for second mode. You can just do it, and if you face any problem, then we can discuss it. Okay, and we will see how to now obtain responses using peak response quantities of a SDF system or the response spectra. Okay. All right. So we'll meet again tomorrow. Okay. If there is no question, then thank you.